Welcome aboard the Fandom's Revenge. Today, I wanted to talk about one of the most convenient things in this life, which is when you criticize someone and then you're eventually proven right. Because everyone enjoys saying the three most magical words in the English language.
I love you.
Nope. Try again.
I told you. Yeah. I told you.
Many longtime Star Wars fans have been trying to advise the muttering fools at Disney about what we want from the franchise, but they shy away from input like Dracula from a garlic suppository. Ignoring customers is rarely sound advice. Whether or not one believes the fandom menace is the majority of Star Wars fans is irrelevant. They represent a significant piece of the customer base, and they are the beating heart of the franchise. They're the ones buying merchandise. The extended universe only existed because of these fans who couldn't get enough of the galaxy far, far away. Star Wars survived and flourished due to their support throughout all the years when there were no movies and no new shows. And when Disney first acquired the franchise from George Lucas, they pretended to understand this.
The main thing is to protect these characters, make sure that they still continue to live in the way that you created them, and that the universe of Star Wars continues to grow.
Really? Nope, fooled again.
Unfortunately, Disney had a funny way of showing their admiration, prioritizing the massive alteration of beloved characters over story, against the wishes of this key segment of the fandom. And now, they're reaping the catastrophe they courted. Rumors are floating that Disney is not thrilled with the viewership numbers of the Book of Boba Fett. It seems as though they finally see where this path of folly is leading them. We're going to take a look at this rumor, and I'm going to pull up some data to back it up to the point that I believe you, like me, will be convinced that there are some serious problems with Lucasfilm's new project, and probably Lucasfilm in general. They thought they had a gold mine, but what they've got is dwindling interest.
This is no mine. It's a tomb.
Let's take a look at this rumor from Bounding into Comics, the Book of Boba Fett ratings not doing as well in streaming as the Walt Disney Company would like. Now, keep in mind, this article is a few days old, but for reasons that will become clear, I wanted to wait until the release of the second episode of the show before I talked about this. The article reads, a new rumor claims that the latest Star Wars series on Disney Plus is not hitting the viewership numbers that the Walt Disney Company expected it to do. This rumor comes from Scooper WDW Pro at That Park Place, who claims his sources informed him that the Book of Boba Fett was not doing as well in streaming numbers as the Walt Disney Company would like. Estimated viewership has not been released by data analytics tracking firms such as Samba TV or Nielsen yet, and it's unlikely Disney will divulge any data as they have yet to do so in any transparent way yet for any of their shows on the streaming platform. Let's be real here, the only time these streaming platforms will purposely release data is when it suits their purposes. If something is going well, they're not shy about releasing the information publicly. I seem to remember hearing just last year how mind-blowing the streaming numbers for the finale of The Mandalorian were, as an example. But when things aren't going well, that's when we hear the spin.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
As a prime example of this, for the past several days, we've seen articles trickle out into the mainstream suggesting that the Book of Boba Fett is more popular than Hawkeye. Now, don't get me wrong, that may be true, but we don't have a complete picture of how popular Hawkeye is, so that might not be saying much. Samba TV and Nielsen rating systems can only give us a partial picture of the numbers for any show. We have to dig in and find our own data in order to fill in the gaps. That's where Google Trends comes in handy. This first chart from that website shows a comparison of people doing Google searches for Hawkeye versus the Book of Boba. This is a pretty slick way to gauge general interest among the population at large. The red line of the chart represents Hawkeye, and this first spike happened on November 25th, when the show was just starting. The show kinda tailed off for a bit, then crescendoed in interest here on December 23rd with the season finale. It appears as though the Book of Boba Fett, represented by blue, may be headed toward a similar but much smaller pattern, with a spike in interest as the show first dropped, but then it wanes for a while until, presumably, it picks back up for the season finale. This is why I waited a few days before I covered this topic. I wanted to make a comparison of the show's first 2 weeks, and here that comparison is. Fett's premiere episode garnered only 60% of the Google searches of Hawkeye's final episode, and then dropped down to 12% the following week. Compare this to Hawkeye's premiere, which garnered 91% interest in searches before dropping down to 25% the following week. Meaning, the Book of Boba Fett got its ass kicked.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
Now let's look at another chart. I got this idea from WDW Pro, and there's a link in the video description to the article with his work. In this chart, we see a comparison between Hawkeye and the Book of Boba Fett to The Matrix Resurrections, which is shown in yellow. Now, by all accounts, this movie was an absolute flop. This article here suggests that The Matrix needed to make $400 million to break even, but it just crossed the $100 million milestone a few days ago. And yet, look at this chart. The new Matrix film, which peaked on December 23rd, coincidentally on the same day as Hawkeye, more than doubled the Google searches prompted by the season finale of Hawkeye. Now, you might say it's not fair to compare Boba Fett and Hawkeye to The Matrix because The Matrix is a movie. But look at the comparisons when we add in Spider-Man No Way Home. Pretty much the most popular movie we've seen in a long time, and we see here what we should expect. It peaks and falls just like any other show, and its peak on December 18th dwarfs all others in this comparison. The Matrix only reached 42% of Spider-Man's interest at its own peak. Hawkeye reached 19%, and Boba Fett reached a paltry 11%. But the following chart may be the most damning of all.
You can't handle the truth!
If you still think it's unfair to compare movies to TV shows, well, fair enough. Let's compare apples to apples. I replaced Spider-Man No Way Home with Cobra Kai, whose 4th season just dropped, and you can see that there's still no comparison. I left Matrix Resurrections in the search for scale, but you can see that at its peak, Cobra Kai reached 86% of the Matrix's search popularity, which blows away its competition on Disney+. And when we add in The Witcher, whose 2nd season just dropped, we can see this is no fluke. It reached 77% of the Matrix's numbers. The 2 Disney shows are minuscule compared to their Netflix competition. they remain far beneath the other two in general interest, and Boba Fett, in particular, remains much more unimpressive than Hawkeye. You can argue that we haven't seen the finale of the show yet, which is fair, but it's not unreasonable to think that it will pale in comparison to its competition.
Where am I?
The pit of despair.
Why is this happening, you might ask? Well, you can judge for yourself, but if you ask me, then I guess these Star Wars fans are sick and tired of Lucasfilm treating their favorite characters like turds. Even if you're a fan of this new show, which the verdict is still out for me on that one, but even if you like the Book of Boba Fett, you have to admit that the buzz on it is fairly pathetic. I mean, Hawkeye isn't exactly a heavy hitter in Marvel, but I'd argue that Boba Fett has been fairly popular for decades, and yet here we are.
I declare bankruptcy!
They might not be quite ready to declare that yet, but I think it's fair to assume Lucasfilm is struggling. As I said earlier, Disney promised they'd respect the original characters of George Lucas, which is what the fans want. But Disney hasn't done that, and with every misstep that Lucasfilm makes, I think we're seeing the diminishing returns of parading around popular Star Wars names in an effort to make a quick buck. The vitriol and contempt we've received in response from the bigwigs at Lucasfilm have turned many of us away from the franchise. Hell, they recently renewed Kathleen Kennedy's contract, which has probably driven a good chunk of people away from the show in and of itself. Star Wars fans are generally a decent group of people. After all, we've had the decency of George Lucas's masterpiece to guide us our whole lives, but after a while, it becomes nearly impossible to forgive the purposeful destruction of what we're so passionate about.
You're officially pardoned from life. I'm stepping in it, look.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.